Back with Alden Chodash of AldenBoxing.com. Past Saturday, Alden, HBO pay-per-view, Joe Calzaghe, lopsided win over Roy Jones Jr. Do you think Roy, in his prime, would have beaten a Joe Calzaghe?
I don't think so, based on the way last night's fight turned out. Well, first of all, one of the main weaknesses of Roy Jones, which has occurred later in his career, which can be called a coincidence based on the fact that he may be getting older and more vulnerable. But guys that go right at him have always been more competitive than guys that stand back and let Roy Jones have fun, so to speak, against. Guys like Antonio Tarver and Glenn Johnson, who go right at him and make him feel uncomfortable. In the case of Calzaghe, he was able to fight like that with more speed, and he was able to fight like that with more consistency because he's just another beast, and that's partly the reason that Roy Jones seldomly won a round in that fight. If he won any besides the first and the second round is still debatable. That's part of the reason why Calzaghe gives Jones so much difficulty.
But Roy Jones, a younger version of Roy, speedier than we saw on Saturday, better reflexes than we saw late in his career. You're telling me at the height of his game, Roy Jones would have still lost to Joe?
I think Roy Jones, maybe not at the peak of his career, but he was at the height of his game, probably tracing back to maybe all the way back to the first fight with Tarver. He wasn't the Roy Jones that fought John Ruiz, just didn't have that much maybe confidence or that much backing going into the fight to perform like that. But he fought as well as he could. He just couldn't find Joe Calzaghe in there, and also the fact that Calzaghe put so much pressure on him. But you mix that in with the fact that Jones can't find him, and you see Roy Jones getting frustrated, and you see Calzaghe's confidence building, which contributed to the fact that he got more dominant down the stretch of the fight.
If you were to design a fighter that can beat Joe Calzaghe, what would it look like?
It's unusual to find a guy that has the energy of Calzaghe, but that's really what you'd be looking for. You'd be looking for a guy like Bernard Hopkins that's able to counter and fight at that pace, be able to fend off Calzaghe's attack for 12 rounds, go with them at that pace, which is unusual unless you're talking about guys like Calzaghe, which is really a rarity when you think of it.
I watched recently Calzaghe Hopkins, and I think a lot of people would say that Hopkins won the fight. And the second time I've watched the fight, I think Hopkins also won the fight. Is he deserving of a rematch?
Well, you gotta think about the public and that the first fight, which probably should be the only fight in my mind, but just wasn't a good fight. The styles don't match up well against each other. Really, it's a tough fight for Hopkins to win. Calzaghe doesn't look good against them. Both of them just really don't really need each other that much. I think Hopkins would be best to possibly retire. I think he probably has a lack of options unless he try to fight Chad Dawson, which has been thrown out for Calzaghe as well, but just isn't a big enough name at this stage of his career to really draw these guys out of retirement.
Yeah, I don't know what Max Kellerman was talking about. I think there's no way that Calzaghe fights Chad Dawson. Why should he?
I don't think so. Chad Dawson, I think Hopkins and Calzaghe would both beat Chad Dawson. I don't think there's as much of a risk as maybe Max Kellerman thinks there is, and I don't think there's as big a reward as would be necessary to draw them out of retirement.
So do you think it's the last we've seen of Calzaghe?
I think this should be the last we see of Calzaghe, and it probably will end up being Calzaghe's last fight.
We talked about this a couple of weeks back, saying that if Roy, even if he lost but performed well, that would set up a Jones-Hopkins 2 matchup. Do you think that's still a possibility?
Well, he fought bravely, to his credit, and whether he wants to keep fighting, coming off that bad beating against a tough fighter like Hopkins as well, is questionable. And it's a fight that he can go without. He's already beaten Hopkins earlier in his career, but I'm not sure. I can't see Jones coming back too quickly after a loss like this.
Okay. Moving on to this week's action. Thursday on the Versus channel, Peter Manfredo Jr., Sakio Bika. First, do you want to see this fight? Second, who's going to win?
I'm kind of on the fence with whether I really want to see it or not. First of all, I got to be honest, Versus is something I really forget about. But Peter Manfredo is a good, skilled fighter. And he's got talent, Sakio, but he's kind of inconsistent and a little bit lazy.
That's
in and out of the
Manfredo,
ring.
right?
Yes, Manfredo. Sakio Beek is the opposite. He's a hard-working guy all his life, in and out of the ring. But he just doesn't have the technical skill of Peter Manfredo. If Peter Manfredo comes in at his best, which he probably will based on the fact that it's on national television and it's a crossroads fight, he should win the fight.
Okay. Saturday, HBO, Jeff Lacy, Jermaine Taylor. You think the loser should pack it in and the winner gets redemption?
What do you mean by redemption?
Well, that he redeems his career.
Yeah, definitely. Both would claim a good victory over each other at this stage of their career.
Okay.
And the loser of the fight would
Should he retire?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. And who do you think is going to win it?
I think Jermaine Taylor is going to win it. I think he's shown more in his recent performances, and he's a better all-around fighter.
Yeah, and even those wide punches, don't you think that's going to catch Jeff Lacy coming in?
Yeah, Jeff Lacy's he's just more vulnerable and not as well immune to punches that he was able to avoid at his best. And Calzaghe just took the ferocity out of Jeff Lacy. He's taken some of Jeff Lacy's technique from him. Jeff Lacy's just slowly rebuilding, and it seems that the losses to Kelly Pavlik on Jermaine Taylor's behalf has done less to belittle Jermaine Taylor than the loss to Calzaghe did to belittle Jeff Lacy.
Okay, finally, England this coming weekend. David Hay in the heavyweight picture takes on Monty Barrett. Think Monty could be the spoiler here?
No. No.
You want to leave it at that?
No, Monty Barrett does not have technical boxing skill to handle David Hay. He's a little too old as well.
You think the Joe Macy fight took something out of him? Or maybe value him?
He has a tough career. I have to give him credit. He's a tough guy, and he keeps going. But he's in over his head in this fight.
Okay, so you're saying Hay should look impressive? And you think that he...
Probably win by knockout as well.
Really? And he's the new face of the heavyweight division?
Well, it depends on how he looks, of course. Everything suggests that he should be.
Okay. Thanks, Alden, for talking to us. And remember to check out aldenboxing.com and fightfan.com for more information. Bye-bye.